How's it going? And welcome to episode 237 of On the Wire, proud member of the Pitcher List Podcast Network. I am Adam Howe, joined as usual by Kevin Hasting, and we got a great show as we continue our march toward the 2026 season. Of course, today we'll be talking a lot of news. We joked right before coming on air, Kevin, like, oh, we took a whole month of November off. Of course, we had a ton of news to talk about. We only had a week apart on recordings. There can't be possibly be, and then we noticed, oh, the winter meetings are actually producing news, and so we have plenty of news to talk about today. And then we'll talk about some pitcher projections, early pitcher projections, as we promised we would from the last episode. We didn't get to those. We only spent 2 hours talking about pretty much everything else. So we gotta spend some time for future episodes, right? We can't just squeeze 7 episodes into one. But Kevin, how you doing?
All great. Like you said, winter meetings. I feel like, we've had a deal or two, it seems like last few years, but in volume, I feel like this year came through like the last few have not, to contribute to this news we have to talk about this week.
Yeah, I feel like go back and listen to an episode of ours in the last couple of years. I'm sure you heard us complaining about that fact.
Right.
So it's nice to be on the other side for a change. So let's get right into it then. Let's not waste any more time. Big signing, though. We'll start off with a couple of hitter signings. Those do make up the 2 biggest signings of the week. Kyle Schwarber stays in Philadelphia on a 5-year deal with the Phillies. That should pretty much close. I mean, he, as a power hitter, as long he's a big dude, he can probably squeeze out another year or 2 after that. But I could totally see Kyle Schwarber ending his career in Philadelphia, either after this or with an additional extension here or there. Is this one of the places that you're kind of hoping to see Schwarber either land or stay in? Are you happy about this signing? What do you think this does for Schwarber, if anything?
Yeah, I think that's a perfectly fine landing spot. I think it's what many expected. We did see a couple other offers right in the same range, but when the offers were the same and he chose Philadelphia, so he enjoys being there. I think the only concern is, do we see this batting average we have for the past couple of years as he continues to age? 2 years running now, over 1,400 plate appearances. It's almost like we should expect what we've seen the last 2 years, hopefully, but then we're going to bring age into it as well. So that's really the only concern. Does he drop in the lineup in the last couple of years of the deal? And not
probably.
I mean, Kyle Schwarber, I mean, when you look at Kyle Schwarber, he doesn't look like a guy that's going to go out there and score well over 100 runs a season, right? And lower in the lineup, he would not. But so that, very minor concerns. But as for the next couple of seasons, yeah, Kyle Schwarber is Kyle Schwarber, and over the past couple with that batting average, he's a first-round player.
Yeah, I mean, this is the peak of his career, right? The traditional 28 to 32 that he's just finishing up. So this is good for him for getting the bag and getting something a little bit more something guaranteed for the next 5. But to your point, yeah, the last 2 years, 240, 248 over those 1,400 or so plate appearances. The 2 years before that, hovering right around the 200 mark for just as many plate appearances. But before that, 266 and 250 2 years before that. So there are more average to positive.
And I remember coming up with the Cubs, he was coming up as a prospect. He was known for his hit tool, right?
Correct. Right. Exactly. And so making the adjustment from, catcher to outfield to DH, a little bit of first base. I don't know how much that played into it. I mean, but he obviously found some kind of groove, not having to worry about the field, DHing every single day, and that's not going to change. Signing, they're not signing him to a 5-year deal expecting to force him into a fielding position. In the latter half of his career as well. So.
I did hear one. I don't remember who I heard say this, but it was a good point. I apologize for not being able to credit them. This does mean that in spite of some health reasons, they may wish they could get Bryce Harper some DH at bats. He's their first baseman.
Yep. Yeah, there you go. A little bit more guarantee in that front. Speaking of first baseman, Kevin, well done on the segue here. Pete Alonso finds a new home, also signing a 5-year deal, going a little bit further down I-95 to Baltimore. Going to be spending his time at first base for the Orioles for the next half a decade. Rumors, however you want to read into them, had him having conversations with the Cubs, with my Red Sox. Would love to have seen, that happen with my Red Sox, but he's going to be in Baltimore, AL East as well. I have less concern or less questions about what does this do for Pete Alonso. I mean, great. I think it's a very good landing spot for him from a fantasy perspective. But what does this do to the rest of the Baltimore lineup? Does it just simply make them better having that kind of insurance policy in the heart of that lineup? Or do we, because he's going to be playing every single day at first base, that, there was not exactly like a rotation in Baltimore for a while at first base, but there were a lot of options. There's no more options at first base. But it also creates less opportunity for their 2-star catchers to move around and split some time at DH. Overall, what are your thoughts on the impact to the Orioles lineup with Pete Alonso now in it?
I think it's absolutely huge. And don't forget, they just added Taylor Ward recently. Mm-hmm. So when you look at their projected lineup on roster resource, other than Pete Alonso and Taylor Ward, there's not a single player in their lineup that approached 20 home runs last season. Pete Alonso and Taylor Ward both approached 40, right? So this is huge. This is exactly what this lineup needed. And I think this is going to be great for Pete Alonso. As you said, doesn't really need to talk much about him, but guys like Holiday and Westberg that we project to hit in front of him, that this is going to be a huge benefit to their runs scored. And the entire lineup all the way around, I think gets a boost, and probably all of the projections of every player in this lineup should be affected. Not necessarily by just Pete Alonso. These two guys combined hit 74 home runs last year that they're adding to this lineup that they didn't get probably 30 out of the 2 spots last season.
As I pull up the roster resource depth chart lineup projection, I mean, I'm not saying that they are done either. Like, right. I don't expect the Orioles to be done. I mean, they're already been noisier than they've almost ever been in my lifetime. In the off season, this is you
have to think Ryan Mountcastle's on the move here, don't you?
Yeah, and that's where a lot of my thought process is like, what does this do to the other first base options, which they had plenty of? Mm-hmm. Between, could be Mayo playing a lot of first base, Ryan Mountcastle, the options of Adley Rutschman and or Samuel Basallo, maybe not moving to first base, but now they're definitely splitting time at DH if they're going to get the extra playing time. So exactly. Where does Mountcastle kind of fit into all of this, unless you kind of force him back into a corner outfield rotation spot? But with Taylor Ward also joining the fray, we always talked about how many outfielders Baltimore had to feed already. I don't know where this kind of fits in. There seems to be quite a few kind of first base types. Maybe I'm just thinking between the rumors of Tristan Casas in Boston and now Ryan Mountcastle kind of being on whether it's fictional or reality, whether they're on the block or not. Obviously I could just be making that up. I don't really know. I don't have any sources out there. But it does seem like there might be some opportunity for some teams that missed out on the Pete Alonsos of the world to kind of fill at a first base spot due to the landing spots of Alonso and what have you. All right. Well, the other hitter that found a new home today, not as big of a deal as the other two, but Mike Yaztremzki signs a 2-year deal with Atlanta. How does Yaztremzki kind of fit into the Atlanta outfield, going into the 2026 season?
I think he's their left fielder. They've tried combinations of, Jared Kelenic over the years and some others over the past couple of years and really had a hard time getting to fit. And he's going to be a strong side platoon. I think with any team he landed, that's what he has played himself into over the past couple of seasons. Kansas City wanted him back. Evidently didn't want him back at this price. He had made comments that he wouldn't mind coming back to Kansas City either. I was hoping that he would, so I was disappointed when I saw this signing, but when I saw the dollar amounts, good for him. That's a little more than I thought he was going to get. So, and I think he fits well in this lineup. If Atlanta can rebound the way we've been waiting 2 seasons now for them to do, but with some Drake Baldwin and additions and maybe getting a shortstop that can actually get on base once in a while. If the lineup in general, I like this spot. He probably hits in the middle third, maybe the very top of the bottom third of the lineup. But I like this spot for Yaztremzki, knowing that wherever he landed, he would be a strong side platoon bat.
Yeah. Do you foresee this projection from Roster Resource being accurate as far as Jurickson Profar being the everyday DH, or I can't imagine that this is an everyday role for him, and that there's some kind of rotation.
Yeah, some sort of rotation, but that Jurickson Profar is going to be in this lineup daily.
Sure.
I just been
on the fielding side,
right? Yeah. When they're facing a lefty, right, that he could easily just slide. He could easily slide in. Roster Resource has Sean Murphy as coming in, and maybe they keep Drake Baldwin in the lineup versus lefties. But I don't know. It gives them that flexibility to move guys around when they face lefties, I expect, because Yaztremzki right there's the spot. You move guys around, you get somebody else in that DH spot.
Yeah. This very well could be Atlanta's biggest move of the offseason. They are not terribly known for spending a whole lot on big name free agents. They usually find their way into bigger names either by extending their own guys or through trades, which they already made one earlier this offseason. We talked about last week as well. So this very well could
they
solidify their lineup.
Yeah, I think, and I know fans of teams want to see a lot of movement, but if you're a fan of Atlanta and you're make the postseason and you have Chris Sale, Spencer Schwellenbach, and Spencer Strider, if those 3 guys are healthy going into the postseason and you make the postseason, you have as good a chance as anybody, right?
There you go. All right. All right, let's get into we'll go back to our closer carousel. None of these, I'll say at least one of these might be a carousel, but that's the question. We'll get to that one a little bit later. The big one here is a 3-year deal. This time for Edwin Diaz does not return to the New York Mets. New York Mets lose out on Pete Alonso and now Edwin Diaz on back-to-back days. He's going to be spending at least the next 3 seasons with the Los Angeles Dodgers. Shocking, I know. They went out and spent money on a big name reliever. No matter how well or poorly that has worked out for them in the past 2 years. Tanner Scott being the example of obviously. Obviously, he's the closer for the Dodgers. No matter how much rotation they've done in that 9th inning over the last 2 or 3 years, you can't imagine him not, now that he's set a new AAV for relievers, which he had just set previously with the Mets a couple years ago. So, I mean, how much do you buy into the fact that there's he's a closer, no one else is the closer, and is there anybody in the Dodgers bullpen that's still kind of worth looking at the back end of any draft?
I mean, at the end of a draft and hold, you can always take one of these guys, especially we talk about it all the time, especially the guys that you believe would be valuable when they're not getting saves. Like Alex Vesia has been over the past few seasons. We talk about him in our ratios category in the regular season quite often throughout the year. So player like that, yes, but looking for saves, and it's just speculating on injury. I think for the most part, sure. All of these guys will get a handful of saves, I believe. But Edwin Diaz, yeah, by far the majority. But that's going to be a luxury that the Dodgers have, right? They're not going to have to roll out Edwin Diaz every time they have a lead of 3 runs or less in the regular season. If they don't think that he's ready to go that day and they want a little extra rest, they want to save any time. So I would say that, you know, hopefully the amount of wins we expect the Dodgers to have would make up for that. Whether if he played for a different team throughout the season, the Dodgers winning more games. So it's not something I really would take into account too much. We know who Edwin Diaz is, and that is probably the best reliever in baseball, you know. So they're definitely one of the best relievers in baseball. So I don't think we can dock him too much for that. Just something in the back of my mind that they're going to have probably the ability to give other guys an opportunity once in a while. But yeah, Edwin Diaz, I think this is a perfect landing spot for him and a perfect signing for the Dodgers, right? If the Dodgers had a weakness, what was it? This was it.
Yeah, well, yeah. I like you talking about the weakness of the reigning World Series champions.
2-time
World
Series champion. Yeah. If they had a weakness, there it is.
So we'll see how that works out.
Their best reliever in the postseason is now their 6th starter, according to Roster Resource. That's rough, huh?
That's postseason pitching for you, though. Like that's how that works out.
He'll be a reliever again next postseason, probably.
Yeah, next postseason, but we'll keep him stretched out throughout the course of the season. Predicting, we're going to talk about pitcher projections a little bit later, of course. Predicting saves, the most difficult thing to do in comparing different projection systems. Some don't even do saves, right? Some just skip saves altogether. Steamer already had, before the signing, had Edwin Diaz for 35.5 saves on the season. Over under 35 saves now that he's with the Dodgers. Kevin?
It'll be close, but I'll go slightly under. We usually only see a couple of relievers a year hit that upper 30s/40, and I don't think any reliever from the Dodgers would do that as they're currently constructed.
Fair enough. Yeah. I think the safe money is on the under there, but you're going to see a lot of people drafting based on, dreaming on the dream of over, just because of the landing spot on the team context.
We talk all the time. We've talked this. I hear other people talk about this. You're drafting saves when we draft these players, right? But there comes a point when the guy with a 1.6 ERA is quite a bit, and say 28 saves, I would draft him over Carlos Estevez and 35 saves.
Sure.
Right.
There's always going to be value in balancing those two things out.
Exactly.
Or strikeouts as well. I mean, the difference between a guy who's going to get you 25 saves and 25 strikeouts versus the guy who might get you 20 saves and 75 strikeouts. There's value in there as well. Another reliever who did most of his job in the 9th inning last year for 2 different teams, Kyle Finnegan. He's going to stay with his new team. He's going to pull a Josh Naylor here and sign an extension with the team he got traded to. The Detroit Tigers are keeping him around for the next 2 years. This has got to be a sign that they are happy with his production after coming over, that he's got the leg up on the closer role for the Tigers going into 2026. Are you drafting him with that assumption?
No, I think it's still a share. After Detroit acquired him and he pitched well and they liked him, Will Vest had more of the 9th inning opportunities than he did down the stretch. And definitely in the postseason, it was never Finnegan, if I'm remembering correctly. So I think Vest probably is still my favorite, and I would draft him ahead of Finnegan. He being drafted ahead of him, but I think I would. Finnegan's still going to get some saves, right? It's AJ Hinch, and we know that he's going to play matchup time to time.
Yeah.
So, but I don't even think Finnegan is the larger share of opportunities out of this pair. I think it's close to 50-50, but I think he's slightly behind.
Yeah, I think at least going into 2026, it's clearer than it was going into 2025 for the Detroit Tigers.
I think we're down to 2. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. 3 or 4. All right. And the last one here before we take our first break on the reliever side, Gregory Soto, who's had some experience in the final innings of games in his career. He signed a 1-year deal with shocking Pittsburgh Pirates. They signed a 1-year deal for a reliever. Is this a let's showcase him in the 9th inning? Let's bring up his value. So in July we can get something for him. Or are you still putting all your eggs in the in the Santana basket for closing out games for the Pirates?
For right now, but I'd be very cautious. I think I'd still plan on Dennis Santana being with the team and their closer, but that they could move him, and Soto then would, in my opinion, probably be the guy at least to start the season. So that's what I'd be watching.
Yeah. There's always there's a lot of talk that Dennis Santana should have or would have gone last year as well. During the trade line, he did not. So it seemed pretty obvious that he would be the closer going in, for the rest of the season, which he was for the most part, and then closing out games in 2026 as he finishes up his last year of arbitration eligibility for the Pirates in this season. So we'll see. I expect him to be on the move regardless. So if they just need to, it depends on who they need to showcase more, right? And maybe it's a share just so they can get both of these guys 12 saves, by the deadline.
You were asking about some of the other Dodgers guys. So like in a draft and hold, I think because of what you just said, you expect Santana to be on the move. Maybe not before the season starts, but you expect him to be moved at some point. I think if I'm specking on saves in a draft and hold, I would draft Soto ahead of the non-closing Dodgers when you asked me that question earlier.
Sure. Yeah. I don't expect Santana or Soto to go somewhere where they would stay the closer, but you draft the closer, you draft the saves that you're going to get now, and you cross your fingers on the guys you're going to get later, especially in a draft and hold. So yeah, good call out there. All right, like I said, we're going to take our first break. We got plenty more news to get to, so don't go nowhere. All right, we're back. Kevin, let's get right back, and we got a couple more pitchers signing new deals with new teams. With first the longer of the two deals, Steven Matz signs a 2-year deal. Good for him, getting 2 years added on to his career. This time he'll be spending that pair of years with the Tampa Bay Rays, as long as they don't decide to trade him somewhere else. I didn't see a no trade clause in this announcement of this deal. What role do you expect him to play for Tampa Bay, if you can even give anybody a role in Tampa Bay?
Yeah, that's tough, but as they look currently, I believe he's probably right. Yeah, I agree with Jason there at Roster Resource. He's got him in the rotation as the 5th starter right now. And if you are a person that believes in the every other year good, bad, he is on your no draft list. You absolutely want nothing to do with Steven Matz. If you think that's completely random, then the 70-some innings he gave us last year were really, really good, and I'm intrigued to what he might do if he is indeed in this rotation.
Yeah. I can't imagine he's not in the rotation. Like he's very... I'm not surprised by this landing spot whatsoever. He totally seems like he's.
And we know Tampa, they're going to get what they can get out of him.
Exactly.
They're signing a veteran like
Rays his whole career, honestly. Yeah. Obviously, he's never spent any time with the Rays until now, but like he's at that stage where it's like, yeah, this is like what they did with Charlie Morton to I mean, different, obviously different pitchers or what have you. And they're going to get different things out of Steven Matz. But he's going into his age 35 season. They're going to squeeze whatever juice they can out of this lemon, and hopefully make some lemonade for at least a couple games.
Yep.
But he probably won't be doing a whole lot of that for most of my teams. Maybe the perfect matchup like stream, and I'll be eating my words like halfway through the season as I'm like, all right, I'll throw a buck on Steven Matz because he's got a good matchup, but I'll probably lose that one in that case. Mike Soroka signs the shorter of these two deals, a 1-year deal with Arizona. I mean, I don't think most of us expected Zack Gallen to be back with Arizona at this point either. But does this kind of like solidify that theory that, Mike Soroka is just a replacement for Zack Gallen in that rotation?
Yeah, kind of looking that way. And another guy that in limited innings, and I don't expect him to double his inning count, but if he had what has become more of a standard, 170, 180 innings is what the 200 used to be, prorate to that, and he's over a 2-win pitcher. So similar to what we were just talking about here. So yeah, I what you just said about Steven Matz is kind of, I feel about Soroka, and I don't know that it'd be eating words, but yeah, I think we're going to be talking about him in certain matchups throughout the season.
Yeah, it's a tough landing spot to go to the NL West as a starting pitcher in general, facing the Dodgers a whole bunch, pitching a couple games in Colorado. San Diego's no picnic. San Francisco can do, some things sometimes, especially on the road. But yeah, I mean, I think this is a great spot in general for Soroka, where he is in his career after getting just about 90 innings, going up 10 innings from the year before, and kind of building himself up from all those injury concerns that we've seen him have over the previous 3 or 4 seasons. Far cry from his 175 innings in his heyday in Atlanta in 2019, but he's building himself back up to that. And knock on all the wood in my office here, if he can stay healthy, and he could very easily build himself back up to 120, 140 innings throughout the course of the season, and then maybe help himself snowball that into another 3-year deal or 4-year deal. Because I mean, this is his 28-year season. He could probably get away with another 1-year deal if he needed to do one more prove it deal in 2027. But he's going to be trying to find a way to get to that multi-year deal, sooner rather than later, especially with his injury history.
Yeah, that's exactly where I was going to go. It's a bit surprising to me that Soroka is still only 28 years old. Seems like he's been around forever in that brilliant season he had in 2019 that you mentioned, but still 28 years old. So if he is healthy, and he did add innings last season, and if he can build on it again, I know we'll be talking more about him later. Our PLV projections have him for 123 innings. Steamer has him for 139. That's 16 innings. That's a big difference. That's like 3 starts throughout the season. So depending on which end of that spectrum you are on could determine whether you're in or out on Soroka.
Now, another spot I think would have been a really good fit for him is staying in the NL West, would be in San Diego. We're going to talk about San Diego right now, just because of the announcement that they made of the intention to keep Mason Miller, Adrian Morejon, David Morgan, some of their top relievers who either had shown some interest in being a starter, or there were some rumors that they could be stretched out. They are going to be, all 3 of these guys are going to be staying in the bullpen, making them a prime candidate to add another starter off of free agency, whether that name is familiar, like keeping Michael King around, or going out and getting another kind of number 1, 2, or 3 kind of guy like a Freddie Peralta or whoever is still available that kind of fits into their mold. But does this, in your mind, does this solidify Mason Miller as the closer and Robert Suarez is not coming back to the Padres?
At least the first half of that. Yes.
So
And then it makes it very doubtful that Robert Suarez is coming back. Yes.
But you're saying you expect so even if Robert Suarez comes back, do you expect Mason Miller to be the closer?
I do.
Oh, interesting.
Now at this point, now that they have told us he's going to stay in the bullpen, they lie, but that's where we're at now.
They do lie.
They do lie.
Lying does happen
time to time, but right now that's what we have to go on.
I can't imagine that they. Again, I always go back to financials when it comes to arbitration eligible relievers, especially with all the history that Mason Miller's already put forth, what he's already banked with his time in Oakland. If they were to sign Robert Suarez, probably the best. I don't have the list in front of me, but the best reliever still out on the market now with Edwin Diaz off the books, Devin Williams as well. If they were to sign Robert Suarez back, that money is already accounted for. And so does that change your mindset to be like, well, if you're going to spend the money, Robert Suarez is going to get money, right? He's going to get paid no matter where he gets signed. So if San Diego is going to put that money forth, why would they not use him in the final inning to basically guarantee that Mason Miller's not going to cost a bunch of money later on? If they're okay with spending the money on Mason Miller, you're not going to spend the money on a top end reliever, a $20 million reliever in the season. So I'm of the opinion if they bring back Suarez, he will be paid to be the closer. And financially, it makes no sense to have Mason Miller be the closer in that situation. They don't need to bring Robert Suarez back, and I'm of that opinion. I don't think Robert Suarez comes back, and Mason Miller is the closer. So I think I agree with your original statement, but probably not if they bring back Suarez.
I don't think they would care. I don't think they would expect maybe Mason Miller's even on the team, so they don't care what his arbitration costs. They're always moving.
That's true.
Right? They bring in Juan Soto for half a season and move. San Diego, I don't think they care, at least not as much as some other teams would, for sure.
So,
but I don't think they're bringing back Suarez either. I just had left that in as a slight possibility because he hasn't signed anywhere. So I just no, I agree with you for the most part. Yeah.
Where is Robert Suarez signing?
I don't know. We've heard a couple of these guys, a couple of the relievers, some rumblings in San Francisco. So that's the first one that pops in my mind. You know me, I don't try to speculate much on where players are going to land. Typically, when I do, it's that if I really feel they're going back to their previous team. That's when I have an opinion on where a player might land. That's usually it. But there has been some rumblings with some of these relievers in San Francisco, so I could see that. We know that maybe the Mets, because they were linked to possibly bringing Diaz back after the Williams signing. So maybe they're still in the market for the top relievers left on the market. But yeah, I'm not really good at speculating on where the players land.
So I'm glad you talked long enough. It gave me some time to pull it up because I was curious, and I was just going to.
I saw you
typing straight up. Is Robert Suarez being drafted as if he is a closer somewhere? That's the question. Is there opportunity to do a draft right now if you feel Robert Suarez is going to get paid? And if he's going to get paid, he's probably going to be a closer. Is there an opportunity to get some value there? Now, we talk about this a lot as far as the pros and cons of drafting teams early on. We're getting to a point where it's not even early anymore. Once you get to mid-December or once you get, past the holidays, it's no longer drafting early. So you still have an opportunity here, but and I did not have enough time to stall and find.
He's going right after, as far as relievers, he's going right after Josh Hader. And just before Iglesias and Estevez.
Yeah, so he's being drafted as a closer.
Yes.
And so yeah, it's probably somebody I'm avoiding then at this stage. I don't know if he could jump up. I mean, that's the thing is I think I'd be okay drafting him. Yeah, I had an ADP all drafts on NFBC, which has been 127 completed drafts so far, at ADP of just under 84. Or he's the 80th player off the board altogether.
Yep.
I'm not drafting somebody that is not guaranteed to be a closer in the top 100.
I think we're all a little more scared of that than we used to be. There was a time when we'd say Robert Suarez is going to be the closer where he signs. But then after last year's trade deadline, where we saw a couple of teams just go bolster their bullpens with all of the top relievers they could, Yankees, right? Mm-hmm. And we've heard rumblings about that with the Mets and Diaz and such. So yeah, I think we're a little more tentative of this season than we might have been in the past.
Yeah, I mean, I don't trust Rafael Iglesias, but I'm taking Iglesias over Suarez right now.
Exactly. Same with Estevez.
Yeah. Suarez signs with the team where it's pretty obvious he's going to be the closer. Fine. I'm perfectly happy drafting him here. If maybe even bumping him up a little bit from here. But yeah, not without that guarantee.
Yeah, I agree.
All right. That's all the signings that I thought were worth talking about or potential signings. We did have a couple of drops, some waivers, either being dropped all outright or being claimed off of waivers. First, talked about San Francisco. They dropped Marco Luciano onto waivers, and he got claimed pretty quick by the Pittsburgh Pirates. You got to expect that's a pretty good landing spot. We're going to talk about another trade. You know what? You'll get into the Pirates made another trade earlier, or right around the same time, actually, with my Boston Red Sox, sending off pitcher Johan Oviedo to Boston and getting, I should just call him his nickname, Hans Nixon Garcia, the password to the outfielder. As the outfield prospect, he did get the call up last year, but there's no guarantee that he makes the opening day Pirates roster. Both of these guys, though, are going into situations where you have to expect that they're going to get a little bit of a look. They're going to get a look by the Pirates. Can Marco Luciano take advantage of that and at least show glimpses of that top he was a top 2 or 3 prospect on most lists that you would look at, especially from a fantasy perspective. The strikeout rate was always a problem, but there's so much bat speed, so much talent in general. It just never came to show itself in San Francisco. Will that change do you have expectations that it would change in Pittsburgh?
I don't know that I have expectations that it will change. I think to what you started to bring up initially is the landing spot is nice, because with a team like Pittsburgh, we probably see him get the opportunity to show us if he can, right? Which is a lot, one big hurdle to jump, right? But we're talking about a guy that hit 214 and almost 600 plate appearances at AAA last year. So, it just
in the PCL.
It just hasn't happened. Now, what we do, when I see a guy like that, is he taking his walks? Is his OBP 100 points higher? Yes, it is. So that sure gives me a little bit of okay. I'll keep an eye on this guy, but for this, it's a team like Pittsburgh that's going to take a chance, right? Maybe there's an adjustment here. Maybe the certain coaches can find something. And the talent, he's still only 24, and we know he was talented. You mentioned, he was near the top of every prospect list out there. So I like to see him. I'm pretty excited to see if Garcia can make contact in Pittsburgh. He's penciled in the lineup already. So that's the key, Adam. Just use his last name, then you're good.
Yeah. I wish his last name is equally as common as his first name is uncommon. So that's not helpful. It's equally unhelpful in the opposite direction. But Garcia in Pittsburgh, of course, I always mention, living in Indianapolis, AAA team for the Pirates is right here in my backyard. So maybe I'll at least to start the season, I wonder if I'll see either one of these guys, Luciano or Garcia, down here in Indianapolis before opening day. or if they crack the lineup right away just so they can get as much look at these guys at the major league level. Because as we mentioned, Garcia already made his debut in Boston last year after spending most of the time in Worcester. I wouldn't be surprised if both of them are on the opening day roster. What their roles will be, that I guess is more of a question.
Right, because Pittsburgh's got a team full of guys like this.
Exactly.
I'm sorry, I want to jump you right. We have Nick Gonzalez. He was pretty highly touted prospect that we haven't seen a lot yet. Nick York was a prospect with your Red Sox, right? They got him, right? So I think they throw all of them out here. And roster resource right now, for lack of someone better, has Jack Sawinski in their lineup as a designated hitter. I doubt that. I think they go get another one of these young guys that was another that they hope turns into a post-type sleeper here again, and fill this lineup with guys like that. Joey Bart, we've started to see flashes of. Right. And if O'Neill Cruz is the athlete that a couple of years ago we thought he was, until, maybe it's this Pittsburgh lineup and the atmosphere that's kind of been dragging his performance down. We've started hearing that talk. A whole bunch of young guys, even if the lineup still isn't very good, can help that. So maybe this is a lineup we should probably, pay a little bit of attention to. I'm not expecting anything huge out of them other than possibly O'Neill Cruz, but I think this is something that maybe this is they might put some runs up, is what I'm saying.
Okay. Higher strikeout percentage for the Pittsburgh Pirates, Marco Luciano or O'Neill Cruz?
O'Neill Cruz, because if it's Luciano, he won't crack the lineup.
Yeah, they won't give him I said percentage though, so it's percentage. So it's like
I think it'd be too high to get him in the lineup. So I'd go with Cruz. Yeah.
He's just gonna keep on. He's just gonna, just do what you do, O'Neill. Just keep going. All right. Last another note on waiver here. And we're gonna get to that. But first we're gonna take another quick break. All right, really quick waiver note here. Toronto moving around some roster spots as they add a couple of pitchers, as we talked about last week with Ponce and Dylan Cease. Yariel Rodriguez was put on waivers to clear a spot on their 40-man roster. I think Jose Berrios is going to come up a little bit later as far as like expectations projections have for him, especially with playing time between innings pitched and games started. But there's still an opportunity for him to be either the fifth or sixth man in that rotation. Yaro Rodriguez kind of, you expected him to be at least an option to do a spot start here or there. I don't think he was going to be in the rotation or, pending 4 or 5 injuries. But now he's not on Toronto's radar at all. Thoughts on where Yaro Rodriguez could be, sent to? I assume somebody's going to pick him up. What's your assumption here?
Yeah, I think someone's going to give him a shot here. I hope it's. I'd like to see him in one of the pitcher-friendly ballparks for teams that my Kansas City Royals is a team that picks guys like this up when they're discarded, and a pitcher-friendly ballpark. I'd like to see what he could do there. So a team like that, but Royals have some pitching depth. There are talks that they may trade some of it, so that could be a move to grab someone to replace some depth with if they trade a guy. So a team like that, I think makes sense. But yeah, we talked about Cody Ponce last week, and with that giving them 6 starters, if you include Jose Berrios, yes, you need 7 or 8 to go into a season, but they probably could spare Rodriguez there.
We just talked about them. They said that they're not going to move their current relievers into a starting role, but San Diego does need some rotation help if they're not going to bring back the likes of Michael King or get a top end reliever. Yaro Rodriguez seems like he could be a really good claim on their part, and that he keeps that same role that he had in Toronto. But maybe they rely on him a little bit more to fill out the back end of that rotation, or at least to give it some stability. or some options. So a situation like that is where I expect a decent team that just needs a questionable fifth starter to take a shot on Yariel here. And so San Diego's kind of maybe just because we just talked about him, that kind of stands out to me. I don't expect him to get picked up by the likes of Pittsburgh or by a lesser team, just because I feel like you already kind of know what Yariel Rodriguez is. They're not going to spend a lot of I just don't foresee somebody like Pittsburgh or maybe he's a good move in Tampa Bay just because that's their type. But I don't think this is a project that you like kind of build up, give opportunity to see what you can get out of him and then trade him off. This is like, all right, we know what we're going to get out of him. Let's get what we can out of it in the right circumstance.
Yep, I agree.
All right, so I mentioned the Boston trade with Pittsburgh. The other half of that, of course, was Johan Oviedo going to Boston. There were a couple other smaller minor league pieces involved, but I don't foresee them being big fantasy relevant here. So let's talk about Oviedo coming back from his surgery and making a return to the rotation. I have this weird feeling that Oviedo does not start opening day with in a Boston Red Sox uniform. I have this weird feeling that he was traded for in order to be used as bait in some other trade. For whatever reason, the Red Sox are being a lot more noisy this offseason than they have been in the past, willing to either spend and or make moves. They've already made 3 trades. We'll talk about the third one in just a second. But assuming I'm wrong, and Oviedo is with my Red Sox, is he the number 5? Is this a good spot, Fenway Park, for what he brings to the table?
Typically no. I'll answer the park question first. That's easier because I don't think anybody knows, Adam. You're the Red Sox fan. You're asking me. Fangraphs doesn't know. They have him for 69 innings, 47 appearances, 5 of them starts. If that's not hedging both directions, I don't know what it is, right? So, yeah, I really don't have any idea because I don't think anybody does at this moment.
Yeah, I mean, just as a righty going into Fenway, you may not let up a ton of homers if you can work the wall, but you're gonna give up plenty of doubles. With the lefties at the plate.
And Oppo power fly balls or
yeah. So I don't know. This is just the reason why. I mean, because of what we saw out of Tolle and what we saw out of early for in the Red Sox rotation down the stretch in the second half last season. This was a little bit of a surprising move, and this is why it makes me think that hey, like they need to make a trade, and they keep getting asked for pitchers, and they don't want to give up the Tolles and the Earlys of the world. They actually, we didn't mention it, but they dropped Cooper Criswell earlier on in the week as well. So I think that this is just an opportunity to add depth. And then if they absolutely needed to add a young pitcher to a trade, this is the guy that I think would end up being the trade bait.
I was just going to ask you if this is an insurance policy, right? Because, right, 2 guys penciled into the rotation right now that didn't pitch last year. Cutter Crawford and Patrick Sandoval, right?
Yeah, and who knows what you're going to get out of Sandoval. Yeah.
Right. And then, but you put those guys in, but even with a full bullpen, roster research has Oviedo starting the season in AAA, not even on the major league roster here. Right. So is this an insurance policy for, right? You have 2 starters that didn't pitch last season. The bullpen, all of this do the Red Sox even know what their plan for him is yet, is what I'm getting at.
No, I don't think the Red Sox have a plan for him whatsoever.
I think that's the point. Yeah.
And that's my original point. Like, that's why I'm like, I don't see how he fits in. I don't think he fits in.
I think it's insurance.
Yeah, at most it's insurance. Yeah. And I mean, yeah, he's got some great strikeout stuff. You just don't ever know where the ball is actually going to go.
Exactly.
So if he can throw strikes, a lot of strikeout potential here. We've seen 7 strikeout games, 8 strikeout games out of him. You're like, oh, okay, there's something here. It's just a matter of fine tuning that now. Andrew Bailey in the Boston pitching machine, if you will, has proven that they can do some fun stuff with pitchers over the last 2 years or so. So we'll see if, maybe there is an opportunity there for them to kind of work with him and fine tune, use less fastballs and move into more of a mix and match and not have to worry and then work on that control. Rather than just trying to, strike guys out all the time. So we'll see. The other trade, again, we'll stay with Boston here. They trade Vaughn Grissom, the centerpiece for the Chris Sale trade previously with Atlanta. Now he's going to get a chance with the Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim. They get Isaiah Jackson back in this move. Does Vaughn Grissom do anything with his opportunity with the Angels that he was not able to do with the Red Sox?
I think there's still that chance.
I mean, is there anywhere where is he what opportunity are the Angels going to give him? Obviously, they traded for him, so they're probably going to do something. But
Roster Resource has him moving Christian Moore to third base and having Vaughn Grissom at second.
Okay.
I don't know if that's what they plan to do, but the past couple of seasons in the Boston organization, Vaughn Grissom was okay at AAA.
In the greater Boston area, just not in Boston.
Right, a Boston organization. So just about 650 plate appearances, 19 home runs, 19 stolen bases over the 2 seasons at AAA, 260 to 270 batting average, OBP much better, mid 300s. But it's one of those players. The old 4A player is what he has looked like thus far if you look at his player page. So that's what we're watching, but at AAA looks like at 25 years old and it's hard to say a change of scenery because this is his second one in a couple of years. But I'm not discounting him or forgetting about him yet. Definitely still keeping an eye out and maybe even digging more into this roster. I think in a draft and hold, I might be in as my last middle infielder there, because when you look at this lineup, he's going to get a shot at least to start the year. It looks like to me. Yeah,
I'm surprised to see
if Christian Moore can play third base.
That's where I was going. I'm surprised to see that's the expectation. Right. I don't know enough about Christian Moore to know how much time he's had at third base without looking that up. I would really, the aside I was going to make here is Vaughn Grissom as a Red Sox fan just reminds me so much of like Bobby Dahlbeck. It's like somebody who's just like crushes it in AAA, at one point Pawtucket, then Worcester, and then moves into, goes up the pike, goes to Boston, and then just falls off the planet, but then goes back to AAA and crushes it you're like, what is even happening? Like, what portal are you going through on I-90 going between Boston and Worcester that it just all goes away in one direction or the other? It's like when you walk through a doorway, it's when you forget everything that you were like, why you actually walked the doorway. It's something about walking through that doorway that completely wipes your memory. That's what was happening for these two guys, going between Worcester and Boston and back.
And I know it's only been 2 seasons and there weren't a whole lot of games in the minor leagues for Christian Moore, but he never played a position other than second base or hit in the lineup as a designated hitter as a professional. 2 seasons.
Yeah. I mean, it's been done, but like usually it's the other way around. Usually you move from third to second. And it's usually has to do with your defense or your arm strength, just being able to make that throw on a consistent basis.
My question would be, as a shortstop, would Vaughn Grissom be better at third base than Christian Moore at third base?
Yeah, I mean, I could see it. But I guess the one thing we can take away from this expectation is that it's all but guaranteed Anthony Rendon is getting his contract bought out. If it's not expected that he'll be playing third base or any position by Jason over at Roster Resource. So we can take solace in that, I guess. All right, last trade here, going back to the reliever earlier on in the week, or actually I think it was like over the weekend, right after we recorded last week, the Washington Nationals traded their, I'll say for lack of a better word, their closer, Jose Ferrer, to Seattle for catcher Henry Ford, who, no, I don't want to say it that way because it's pretty obvious. Jose Ferrer loses a whole lot of value going to Seattle. We're going to talk about it all season long, of course. So like, hey, they could always move Andre Munoz. They've done it before. Right? But at least for opening day, Ferrer has got nothing. Henry Ford, also another once top prospect, at least at the position. Sorry, Henry Ford. If I said anything else earlier, sorry, it's Henry Ford. What kind of role do you see him fitting in with the Nationals, with Kuiper Ruiz there, other catchers available? Does he stick at the catcher position? Do you see any fantasy value here, even in a draft and hold as a C3 or 4?
Maybe. It worries me about Ruiz a little bit. Not a ton. I mean, but there were Ruiz's. Did you roster Ruiz on any teams last year, Adam?
I feel like I did.
Because if you did, you probably know about the roller coaster. Like he would look like Kuiper Ruiz, what we drafted him as, decent batting average, a little bit of power once in a while for a couple weeks at a time. But the valleys were deep. Seemed like he'd strike out for 20 plate appearances in a row, right? So I'm a little worried about Ruiz, and it does, I typically like the catchers that I project for 500 plus plate appearances, try to get 1100 for my pair. Ruiz isn't in that group. I don't know if he would have been anyway, but he definitely no longer is for me because this worries me.
Yeah, I mean, 267 plate appearances last year. Like, I definitely drafted him last year where I did, expecting twice as many plate appearances. Yeah. I mean, of course, 485 the year before, 562 the year before that. So like he was in line with roughly 500 plate appearances. Obviously didn't come to that, and that had a lot to do with missing not playing in half the games that he probably should have, or have as many games as he did the year before. So yeah, I mean, I expect nothing out of Kuiper Ruiz in general. Like, I'm not drafting him anywhere. He's not even on my radar, because he'll end up being drafted higher than I want to draft him as a C3, and then so what's the point? The whole adage, no one should ever be off your radar, but like when he's being drafted like 5 or 6 or 7 rounds higher than you would expect to want to even consider him, he's basically off your radar.
Yeah, I was just checking, and he is being drafted as a C2 in 15 teamers, not 12s. Right at the back end of that top 30 at 29, and he had been kind of creeping up and then dropping over the past couple of days, and that's kind of what I expect.
Sure.
Yep. Like Gladiators, he crept up because he was a C2, and those are 15-team leagues, so he'll drop back off now, I think.
Yeah, that makes sense. roster resource, of course, has him as the quote everyday catcher, batting toward the, in the back half of the lineup, but still the Nationals. So I think there's going to be a lot of mixing and matching as far as the Nationals lineup to kind of figure out where everybody kind of settles in, at least for the beginning of the season. I think Robert Hassel has an opportunity to move up from the bottom of the order. Brady House can still make some moves as well. So I think there's a lot of opportunity, even though he's already in the bottom half of the lineup. Kyber Ruiz, there's a lot of opportunity for him to move down further if he can't kind of show consistency and stop showing off that roller coaster ride that you were talking about earlier. Riley Adams, of course, the other catcher in that.
Yeah, and he actually had more plate appearances than Ruiz last year.
I feel like I rostered Riley for that exact reason at some point in a couple of leagues. Just when I had to fill in a catcher, I'm like, all right, there's both the national catchers are available. Who do I want? At this point, at the point I was looking at him, I'm pretty sure Riley Adams was somebody I eyeballed a little bit more closely. But yeah, I mean, that's to say Henry Ford can still Henry Ford can still make his way up, but there's not like a clear opening either for him to make a major league impact right away. All right, Kevin, we hit that hour mark. That's a perfect opportunity to take another quick break. And when we come back, we are going to look at some PLV projections, some steamer projections. I'm sure we'll throw in some depth chart projections as well. But this time we're going to be focusing on the pitcher side of things. We'll do that when we come back. All right, and we are back. Always fun to do those come back from break, because I never know if an ad is going to be inserted when I listen back. When I listen to podcasts and they're like, all right, we're going to add breaks. But for those a little behind the curtain, those ads are added dynamically most of the time by the podcast host platform that we use. And so there's never a guarantee that an ad is actually inserted. So sometimes it's just me pausing and then coming right back with no ad break in between. Always awkward. But all right, Kevin, we've been looking over these projections with the fine-tooth comb. There are a handful of projections available right now, but a whole lot more of them will start trickling out after the new year flips over. So we're going to work with what we got publicly. Well, steamer and depth charts are publicly available. PLV projections are out there.
Have been released. It's been they're out. Do you see Kyle's oh
yeah, they're out, but you still have to be I got you.
I'm sorry.
Pro member to access them beyond what we're going to consider this a preview. Like anything we talk about here. Actually, I didn't check with Kyle first. I probably should check with Kyle first. But no, we're anything we talk about here, consider it a preview, but you should be, jumping on the PL Pro bandwagon now. And I'm sure there's still a promo code out there for, PL podcast. Podcast, I think, is always the promo code that Nick puts out there. But go join PL Pro, get access to the Discord, get the projections, and then get a bunch of the other fun tools and toys that are going to be coming out throughout the next couple months and into the 2026 season. What's nice is that if you time it right, when you sign up for PL Pro yearly, you get it for the next year as well. So if you sign up now, you'll have it through the 2026 season and then into the beginning of the off season next year as well. So always a good opportunity to kind of like think of it. Baseball season never ends, right? So it's a year-long thing. So know that you have all of the access to all the different tools throughout the course of a 365-day period based on when you sign up. So Kevin, the first thing that pops out as you're looking through these projections, as far as the pitchers go, it could be a name that really popped out. It could just be an overall theme, overall projections as like, hey, I don't see anybody over X amount of strikeouts or whatever. What was the first thing that kind of popped out as you were looking over these?
The first thing I realized just by as I was first perusing projections and then knowing where guys were being drafted in some early drafts, it does not appear to me that either Steamer depth charts, and I do use the depth charts playing time, or PLV, either one. This is the first one's a negative. The first thing I noticed, neither projection system likes Hunter Brown nearly as well as those drafting so far do. That was the first thing I noticed.
That's always interesting to be like, all right, those who are drafting early October, November, December, where are they putting their energy? Like, where are they putting the stock? Right. They don't have, especially in October, you either got to work on your own projections, or you're going based on gut. And so it's interesting to see. It'll be interesting to see as these projections come out, if they all kind of feel similarly to Hunter Brown, as we're seeing with these projections, and if how much that starts influencing drafts. Like, which one's stronger, the projection influence, the ADP influence,
right,
or just some miscellaneous answer? But I really comes down to is these projections that come out versus what's already been established with ADP. Which one do you think is the stronger hold?
I think this early, it's still ADP. I think it takes a while for it to correct. And it's set. So, and people are seeing it. So it influences things. And once there's a few drafts and we have ADP, it's really hard for players as they're drafting to get too far away from that, unless they are really in or out on a player. And I've done it, and I try so hard not to. And I think I've gotten to the point where I can just completely toss it. But it, I've always said ADP, great for knowing what a player is going to cost us, or when we should try to draft them if we want them, or where we have to draft them if we want them. But it shouldn't affect whether we like them or not, and it does. And it takes a long time. It takes several drafts to change that ADP in order to move them up or down in the ADP ranks. So at this point, I think ADP is probably influencing things more than projections. The projections start to catch up, and I think then it's probably pretty even balanced by the time we get to the end of draft season.
Yeah, that's probably a fair assessment in general. I alluded to him earlier, and I think it's interesting to kind of look at the different projections when they are. You mentioned that you looked at depth charts, playing time, when obviously there's still the Steamer projections, just with different playing time. But when you are projecting playing time based on what we know, what we don't know, and what we think we know, Jose Berrios stood out as a big differentiator between the two. As I lost my tab, of course, as I was starting my conversation here, he had one of the biggest swings in expected innings pitched that I saw, more favoring with the 56 innings pitch swing between Steamer. Now I use Steamer in this one, not depth charts. So I'm not
Steamer and depth charts, their playing time is the same for pitchers. Okay. I should have brought that up earlier. I wasn't 100% sure, but I thought so. But I did verify that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter. Hitters, it did matter. Pitchers, it doesn't.
PLV, if I'm looking at this right, has them for 56 more innings, but with in less games. So having him have more starts, with 15 more starts, where Steamer already has him being majority of the time in the bullpen. And so that obviously impacts, the strikeout potential and what have you. So when you're looking at this, though, how, like, how much is that going to impact when you look at a guy like Berrios, however you feel about him? Like, are you thinking about how much are you thinking about what their role is going to be? It's like the adage, you're drafting role or talent. Do you expect Berrios to be somebody that people are drafting out of value because too many other people are thinking he's mostly a reliever, he's not going to give me what I need?
Right. Berrios is a perfect example for this type of question because, we talked about it last week. This is the signing. Berrios, he might be their fifth starter. He might be their long reliever. We don't know. So this is a perfect situation. This is, and the way I feel about it is, if you believe that he's going to be the sixth starter and they use a 5-man rotation, and so he was not going to be in the rotation at the beginning of the year, but they keep him stretched out so he's next man up, then his ADP is probably about right, because that's based on those innings. And let's see, there's a lot more people looking at Fangraphs projections, the ones that are publicly available, than are looking at PLV, right? So then if you see that Jose Berrios is going to be in this rotation, there's value there, right? PLV is showing us that we would, if he's going to get the innings that they give him, he's more valuable than where he's being drafted. I mean, I know that goes without saying. It's a starting pitcher, and we're talking, is he in the rotation or not? But we already have an idea of where we would rank him if he was going to be in the rotation, because we have one projection system that says, we think he's going to be there. Right.
Mm-hmm. Any other guys that kind of stood out as far as like being different from the other, from each projection, and whether or not you believe in them in one direction or the other?
I think this has been intriguing to me, the relievers in general, and I think it had a lot to do with a couple of the top guys needed to sign. Munoz has been the first reliever off of the board for most, if not all, of draft season. Every time I've looked, I think he's been the top reliever being drafted. Both Steamer and PLV, I believe, have Mason Miller ahead of him, but he is number 2, so not that big a thing. But I think the projection systems, and this is where it comes into when we're drafting, how much do we bring injury into play? Both projection systems, like Josh Hader up there at the top, and there are a handful of guys, Chapman, Bednar, Cade Smith, Duran, Diaz, all being drafted ahead of him. So it's kind of interesting on that, but that's probably the injury concern. When it comes to that starters, I really want to know, and I'm not even certain before I go looking, like what I'm hoping to see, but where do the guys coming back from injury that are being drafted pretty highly, what do the projections say? Kyle Bradish, for example, right? I want to see where both have him. So when I'm looking at the ADP, he's a top, he's what, the 20th pitcher, 30th, 31 pitchers off the board. PLV has him at 48. They're giving him 127 innings, right? So, and then I just want to see where he is on the Steamer as well. I know this is great, me looking things up as I'm talking, but this is kind of what I do as I'm looking at some of these guys. And so this is crazy to me, right? He's ranked about the same spot, but in a lot more innings by Steamer. 162 innings, but he's in he's much lower, which means PLV has his quality of his innings much higher. Right. That's what I'm getting at already. But he's still being drafted ahead of even that. So unfortunately, as much as I like Kyle Bradish and as much as I drafted him last season prior to the injury, I'm probably not going to have much Kyle Bradish, unfortunately, is what this tells me, because he's being drafted as about the 30th pitcher off the board. And actually, no, he is a little lower in PLV, but not as much as you would think for that big swing in innings, right? Almost 40 innings, and he's just a handful of spots behind him. So PLV does have his quality of innings at a little better, but yeah, unfortunately, it's just not going to be there for me. I was looking, it's really hard not to go to the top of these lists, Adam. I was looking at this the other day, or even last week. I think it was last week when we were done recording, because we didn't know we were saving pitching for this week. We didn't know we were going well over 2 hours with all that news last week. So I was looking at this last week, and another injured guy, Zack Wheeler. What are we doing with Zack Wheeler? What are you doing with Zack Wheeler?
I'm probably in my roto leagues. I'm probably just ignoring it, and I'm willing. Chris Towers was in our Discord, was in the PL Discord, talking about Wheeler a little bit today. I noticed, and that I think his opinion on this situation is spot on. It's like there's a chance we see him in spring training, and that's where I will make my valuation. If you see him in spring training and he looks like a shadow of Zack Wheeler, I'm on board, right? But I'm willing to spend a little bit more to know, rather than throw out a guess and hope I get value now on that situation, because Zack Wheeler's not 25 years old. He's not 27 years old. He's he's at the end of his career. As good as he is, he's not going to come back at 100% as quickly as his body would have allowed him to do it 5 or 6 years ago, right? And that was a pretty scary injury, where he basically didn't have a shoulder anymore, in general. So I'm not doing anything with Zack Wheeler personally until I know some actual facts.
That's a pretty good rule to go by. Yeah.
It's no fun. A lot of people will be like, oh, well, there's the fun in that. Facts. Who needs facts?
Yeah. Because in season, we don't talk about early round guys. Off season conversations, we tend to gravitate that way. But, that most of these decisions are later. Like, how many innings should we give a guy like, well, we were talking about the Toronto rotation, Trey Savage, right?
Good one.
PLV's got him at 115. That's probably a pretty good amount for second year guy, right? And 3.94 ERA, 1.29 WHIP, and 7 wins. And then
I have at least the difference is up. That is 6 less wins than Steamer. Sorry, not wins. That is 2 less wins than Steamer has projected for, but that's with 6 less starts and 31 less innings. So PLV has him, just projected to be, less innings on the season due to less games played and, more importantly, less starts made throughout the course of the season. Not so much that he won't go. They don't project him to go any less deep into games or to be more stretched out, but just to whether or not that's Kyle expecting Toronto to go with a 6-man rotation and for them to be less opportunities for him to start every 5th or 6th day, or if they do some skipping, or if it's baking in, a possible injury. I don't know the fact for that, but it is interesting to see those differences. Other guys that kind of fit into the same boat are Bubba Chandler, Shane Bieber in Toronto as well. So maybe there's something to do with the Toronto rotation in general. But you have Jose Urquidy, Hurston Waldrop, like Kyle Bradish. PLV is being a little bit more cautious with a lot of these guys in their situation as far as how many games they're going to start in comparison to what Steamer is.
Yep. And I've talked about this before when we've talked about different projections over the years. And I always like, if when I download the projection system, right, to the spreadsheet, if it's not set up on a per at bat basis, so I can change things and see how that affects their ranking, then I do that, right? I change it to a per at bat, the whole system, so I can change things. So to your point, giving Trey Savage just those 31 more innings and 2 more wins and not changing anything else in PLV, he jumps over 20 spots up the rankings. Yeah. 2 wins is what's doing that, because his ERA is a bad ERA, right? His ERA hurts us. So the extra innings are actually hurting us. I didn't adjust the strikeouts. I gave him 2 more wins and he jumped over 20 spots. And the ERA should, right? If his ERA is slightly better than that, it won't hurt him as much. So,
but this 2 wins,
2 wins over 20 spots.
Yeah, I mean, 2 wins, that does more for you in your Roto League than the ERA hurts
being
you.
The 3.94.
Than the 3.94 does against you in that,
31 innings
in those 31 extra innings. So I get it. I mean, there's obviously the value is there.
That's why we're chasing wins, Adam.
You don't have to chase them, you just have to make them up by plugging them into the spreadsheet.
That's even better. Too bad that doesn't work.
Yeah, just wishing them into existence.
So that's the thing, because especially pitching, right? You mentioned some projection systems don't even project saves.
Yeah.
I believe Derek Carty gets his from Fangraphs depth charts for one of the Steamer free is where he gets his saves from and plugs them in with his ratios and everything. So if they're right, the people that are amazing at doing this aren't even trying to come up with an algorithm to project saves for us. And changing one little thing can move a guy that much. That right there is telling us we have to take all of these projections with a grain of salt, right? And I have always been the type of person, I understand that. I understand why people like Ron Chandler say that they don't even want to look at projections, right? They want to look at skills. I get that. I have always been someone that wanted to put a number on it so I know how to rank my players. It's harder with this guy has some power and a little bit of speed. How's that compared to a guy with some speed and a little bit of power, right? I want to put a number on it, but you don't want to dwell on those too much. And if you do, just change a couple things and see how far that moves them. And maybe you shouldn't have as strong of opinion as you do on a player.
All right. We talk about, you alluded to it, so we have to hit on it.
Yeah.
It's funny because as I'm filtering through this spreadsheet, and of course we talked about Kyle Finnegan staying with Detroit and Will Vest. It's a very obvious that Steamer and PLV are on opposite ends on who's going to get more saves in Detroit. With PLV, like the difference is Will Vest has the largest swing in saves with 7. Being leaned toward the PLV side. So PLV believes in Will Vest. And I flip that around, on the opposite side, Kyle Finnegan has a -5 on the other way. So that's going to Steamer preferring him much more so. But just in general, like you know, the top. I'm taking Edwin Diaz out of here because that was not adjusted for accordingly. So Steamer definitely leans toward Cade Smith, Victor Vodnik, and Robert Garcia more so than the PLV side. You know, it's in. I think the only thing that's really interesting there is that these are guys I don't necessarily expect to be the closer on their team. They are closers for not great teams. Cleveland aside, has their moments, and they'll probably be fine enough. And Kate Smith has been very good. I don't know what to expect out of Texas after the trade with Simeon and Nemo, whatever. Victor Vodnik in Colorado, whatever. But to see kind of like teams that I don't expect to crack maybe 85 wins on the season, or potentially not, or players that I don't guarantee to have that role for a very long time, if ever, in Robert Garcia's situation. There's no guarantee Robert Garcia is going to be the closer on opening day for Texas, right? Your overall thoughts, I guess, on just evaluating closers based on projected saves and how it's all but a crapshoot.
It leads right into what I was just saying. If you feel like you have, even if it's just a hunch, all right, I think this guy's going to get the saves, plug that into the spreadsheet, see where they move. I just did that with Kyle Finnegan. Right, he doesn't move all the way to where Will Vest is, and I'm using the PLV projections. Right?
Sure.
So PLV likes Will Vest's skills better than Finnegan's, but Finnegan does move all the way up to the Carlos Estevez, and there was another closer in that range as well. Will Vest is up with Palencia and Ryan Walker range, according to PLV, when you rank them.
Mm-hmm.
So Finnegan moves up into the Estevez range. What I did is, because I was curious, so many projection systems, right, don't project saves. I said it earlier, right? Oftentimes, especially lower, the elite guys, we're taking other things into consideration, like you brought up. They can get us more strikeouts. The teams that are confident in their guys, they're throwing them out there in the tie game in the ninth, they get more. Every one of these guys is projected for 4 wins. A couple of them are going to get 9 or 10. That changes things drastically, right? But if you just sort by projected saves, that's why we're drafting them, right? And Carlos Estevez is the one that you might want to kick out because they're ratios, but all of the top 20 other than Estevez have decent ratios if you just list them by saves. Here's the problem. There's only a 5 save difference in the top 20 guys. Saves aren't being projected. So this is something where my point is, even the systems that do put a number on the saves, they're not going to be very accurate. They're going to be so volatile compared, because anybody that's got a job, they're projected for 25 to 30 saves. Boom. So that becomes the issue. I think this, and the more I'm saying this and talking out loud, I think this deserves a lot of attention. Like, really, is there a way that we can decide which guys are going to outperform that save number or underperform that save number? Because it's going to affect the rankings using these projections substantially. And if you have a way that is better than flipping a coin at figuring that out, you're onto something. Right? No, seriously.
Yeah.
You just be better than flipping a coin at over under on save numbers for these guys. You're moving them up or down, and probably quite a ways.
As we look at other categories, let's move into strikeouts a little bit. Anything that you kind of noticed in that area? The thing that kind of stood out to me here when I'm comparing these two is that there's not a big difference in there's not a lot of standouts in strikeout percentage. Now, there's some fluctuations in strikeouts in general, but usually it is in line with an innings pitched difference as well, right?
Right.
The biggest swing here is that I'm looking at is Ian Seymour, 42 strikeout difference between PLV and Steamer, leaning with PLV leaning with more strikeouts, but they're also attributing that with 37 more innings as well. So that seems to be kind of a core aspect to these projections in general, especially when it comes to pitchers, is strikeout rate, obviously K minus BB percentage as well. So this really, what this tells me obviously is that this puts so much more emphasis on projecting the playing time and accounting for possible injury and possible role changes throughout the course of the season. Any names kind of stand out to you in the strikeout department?
A couple of guys, again, either coming off injury or younger guys or combination of both. I'm really intrigued by guys like Mackenzie Gore, right? 171 innings, 190 strikeouts. We love that. Are we getting those 171 innings? I think most of us think that's probably fairly accurate. So yeah, I like that. Do we trust guys like Christopher Sanchez to go 200 plus innings again? That's rough these days, but he's been doing it the past couple of years. So yeah, Jacob Misiorowski. Here's one. We've talked about him multiple times this season. 160 strikeouts, only 130 innings, right? So is that an accurate innings projection, would you say, for Misiorowski? Because we know on the per inning basis, the strikeouts are going to be there. So I know you changed our conversation from playing time to strikeouts, and I'm kind of sending it back to playing time, but Steamer has him for 147 innings. So that gets you, but only 162 strikeouts.
Yeah, so we have a little bit of a, let's see,
the strikeout difference there in the percentage a little bit.
Yeah, with that Steamer having, sorry, PLV has them at a
28.9,
a 3.3% increase in overall strikeout percentage. So there are some players out there where that strikeout percentage does fluctuate. Chase Burns was one that I noticed.
He was the other guy. He was the next one I was going to bring up. I love that.
Because those innings, because the playing time is almost exactly the same between the two. And that's what stood out to me the most there, is that so that K percentage, like, so when you do see those situations, those 17 or so more strikeouts mean that much more because it's based on the actual percentage. And when you get a lot of overlap between projections, when the stats are starting to line up, and I think Ariel Cohen will say this all the time when, as he's looking, when you're looking at projections, and I tend to do this as well, is you're looking for as much overlap as possible, right? Mm-hmm. And then you're also looking for the flip sides, like which one is the outlier.
Right.
And so if there's a lot of fluctuation between different projection systems, especially for pitchers, you got to start asking why. Where is that fluctuation going? But when there's a lot of overlap, when 2 or 3 or 4 different projection systems are all expecting very similar innings pitched, very similar rates in general, you got to start putting a little bit more stock into what that result is going to look like. And so that Chase Burn one really stood out to me just because they were so similar on the expected playing time, but so different, that swing in percentage and strikeout percentage, I took note of.
It's funny. And Chase Burns and Jacob Misiorowski over the past 4 weeks in draft and holds being drafted right next to one another. 43rd and 44th pitchers off the board.
Yeah. Another young starter that obviously seems to be weighted a little bit more heavily on the PLV side, Nolan McLean. Same swing and K rate as Jacob Misiorowski with a 3.3 swing in PLV's favor. As I'm scrolling down here, let's see if any names kind of stand out in that realm. Richard Fitz with his new home, with a 2.8 swing, again, toward PLV. Cam Schlittler at 3% swing, again, toward PLV. And then on the opposite end, you know what? I'm gonna completely change course because I really want to know your opinion on this situation. PLV is a little bit higher. Actually, they're not. They're not higher. They're only higher on the rate. But I'm curious to know what you think of River Ryan in Los Angeles, and whether or not this is you talked about earlier, like the guy's coming back from injury. River Ryan coming back from Tommy John with the Dodgers, like, was pretty exciting when he got the call up, at the end of 2024. Obviously missed the entire 2025 season, but had that surgery at this perfect time where it's like you can miss an entire season and then have plenty of time to recover in order for the next season to be ready. Are you expecting anything out of River Ryan in that situation with the Dodgers?
Maybe. It's intriguing because it's the Dodgers, right?
Yeah.
When you look at the Dodgers right now, and maybe for the first time since they've all been on the roster, Yamamoto, Blake Snell, Glasnow, Ohtani, Sheehan, Sasaki, they're Kasperius, they're all healthy right now. We don't expect that to continue, right? Where the Dodgers' plan is to get as many of those guys healthy at the beginning of October, and then they're ready to roll. So, yeah, I mean, I don't discount anybody that is out there. I'm intrigued to see this. Will he be throwing in spring training? Does it appear?
I haven't seen any news on it, but I expect him to be there. And to, whether or not he gets how many innings he gets in spring training actual games.
I mean, Will Klein was valuable following Ohtani last year at times. Anybody that gets even a spot start with the Dodgers, we're going to be interested in, because they're going to be favored to win that game usually.
Yeah.
They're chasing wins.
Fair. Well, if I'm continuing on with the theme I had earlier, on the opposite side, Steamer, the names that kind of stand out to me on K rate that Steamer is leaning toward, going down this: Johnny Brito, Gavin Stone. How many starts these guys get? I'm skipping over the obvious relievers like John Duran and Mason Miller.
I got one for you, Adam.
Go for it.
This is great. Like we hear. Well, I hear a lot of people say this. I think you've probably heard this, right? If we had one thing to go off of for pitching, K minus BB, right? Mm-hmm. I think that's pretty much a general consensus. And what PLV has projected for K minus BB, and I toss out relievers, this is the order when you sort by K minus BB: Tariq Skubal, Garrett Crochet, Chris Sale, Paul Skeens, Zack Wheeler injured, right? DeGrom, Ohtani, Hunter Green, Logan Gilbert, Cole Reagans. That sounds like a lot like an ADP board, but I left one player out that actually comes out fourth. I left out the fourth highest K minus BB. That's a starting pitcher. He's the guy you just brought up, Chase Burns. I'd probably bump him up my draft board a bit.
And then but that's going to be the PL Darling type of player, right? Because as I mentioned before, like at least the strikeout percentage, that's a big difference. Let's see where he falls on the KBB rankings here, as far as like they swapping between. That's Corbin Burns, wrong Burns. Oh, Blackburn, that doesn't count. Chase Burns. That's a 2.3 swing. So the thing is that they're more in line with the walk percentage than the strikeout percentage. Big swing, PLV really pushing the K percentage higher with Chase Burns at 2.9% swing in their favor, but only a 0.6% swing in Steamer project favor. So that averages out. It's still 2.3 in K minus BB swing between the two is still, other guys that are in that same boat. Justin Robleski, Tanner Scott, so other relievers, of course. Kate Smith. Yeah, they're all relievers in this as far as like having that swing in the PLV favor. Chris Bubick is in that. John Means right there as well. So I wonder if there's on the opposite end of that where we're seeing Steamer, same. They just favor their own relievers, really. The starters in general are closer to that, flat range. Anybody on either end of the spectrum is typically reliever, with the exception of Ben Brown, I guess, is arguably both. Yeah. Yariel Rodriguez actually favored a little bit further, closer on the Steamer projection side as well. So that's another name that kind of pops out. Spencer Strider. All right, so there's a handful of starters, or at least we want to see what they're going to be. Spencer Strider, an interesting one to a difficult one to project. What kind of stuff is he going to actually have and show us in spring training that will ultimately, how much of that will impact because all these projections are not set in stone, right? This is version 1.0 of the PLV projections. Steamer will adjust as well as things happen throughout the offseason, as players sign, as news comes out, injuries, et cetera, roles are ironed themselves out. But then how much does spring training performance, and when I say performance, I don't mean the stats. I don't mean how many strikeouts they're throwing, how many, it's who's throwing a new pitch, who's, being used in a different way by their team. How much do you think that ends up influencing those projections, and how pissed are you when a projection changes at the end of March, like the day after your draft is completed?
Yeah, that can affect things. You bring up Spencer Strider, and I'm looking here, and guys like that, when we're talking about this, I just feel like they're going to be either a huge value or a big bust where they're being drafted, right? And he's being drafted right in that range. Chase Burns, Mizorowski, Tyler Glasnow. Those are the three being drafted right after him, right in front of him, McLean, who you brought up in the same conversation. And so Spencer Strider being drafted on average with the last pick in the 7th round of 15-round drafts. I just feel like that's not going to be his value, and it's not going to be anywhere close to his value. But I don't know if it's going to be up or down, way better or way worse, right? That drives me more crazy than when projections change. I guess I don't even typically always notice it that much, because I'm always, like we were talking about earlier, I'm always manipulating them. If this happens, where did they move? If this happens, what does that affect anyway? So I don't get really, I guess, dead set on what a guy's projections are. I'm always flipping them around a little bit anyway.
Fair enough.
But that's a great point. It absolutely is. It's all these young guys in this area. Yuri's right in this spot.
Those are so hard. It's just
that's a fun range. It's all the young guys, and then like the second, third tier, depending on how big your tiers are, of closers, right? Iglesias and McGill are in this range, but then it's all these young pitching or guys coming back from injury like Woodruff. Fun area of the draft that I think so many of us are going to have a lot of different opinions on this playing time. So I guess that's why it makes it so fun. Yeah, there's some pretty wide ranges of min and max picks in this area.
Any pitchers that stood out to you as being a little bit further in favor on one projection or the other? Darlings, if you will.
I
mean, we talked about Chase Burns. I think Chase Burns is going to be one of them on the PLV side. if you believe PLV projections will help you a lot more than steamer projections would. Josh Hader recently re-signed Emilio Pagan. Those stand out at the top of the list. Connolly early, depending on how many innings. And now when I filtered this out based on these two projection systems having very similar innings pitched expectations. So I filtered out all the guys that had really big swings in that expectation. So these are the guys that, Aroldis Chapman. So their innings pitch are very similar on both of these projection systems. So it makes the swing in ERA a little bit more noticeable. And on the opposite end of that, as I refilter this, on the steamer side, the names that kind of pop up being more steamer focused. Let's see. We got Ben Joyce coming back from his injury. Again, on the reliever side. Jose Ferrer, obviously with his new role. Just still being on the steamer side. Matt Brash. So some other, these guys that we talk about in the reliever section on a regular basis, depending on how you feel they're going to be. Like, obviously there are one projection is weighting some of these relievers in the ratio categories a little bit more heavily than the other ones. So depending on which direction you want to go and which one you want to trust a little bit more, those are the relievers that you can find to kind of shore up the very end of your draft, the very end of your rotation, your bullpens on your teams, at least to start the season. Max Fried, actually, that's the biggest starter name that I'm seeing lean more toward the steamer side than the PLV side, at least in ERA.
Yeah, Hunter Green is liked more by PLV as well than steamer. Just projected for one more win, projected for less strikeouts, almost 20 less strikeouts, but almost half a run ERA better by PLV. So Hunter Green likes Hunter Green's ratios better, and that it's a pretty big difference, about 10 spots in pitching for a guy going really early.
Right. Cade Horton, more on the PLV side on both ratios. That stood out to me just now as I was filtering through WHIP. Not a bunch of swing, not nearly as much swing on the WHIP than on the ERA between the two projection systems. But on the steamer side, very, very slightly leaning toward Andrew Heaney. Yeah, nothing that really stands out on that side, to be honest. No names that really pop out. Logan Evans, if you believe in that situation. So the ratios not as much of a swing, especially when you compare similar playing time. Kevin, anything else that kind of stand out that you were planning on talking about that we didn't talk about when it comes to these projections for pitchers, and any other piece of advice you want to kind of close this out with?
I don't think so. We talked quite a bit about it. I'm really big about, if you want to see what would happen, I've said it this way before, I'm going to bump a guy up a little bit. Well, how much and why? Well, I think he's going to have more wins than this projection system says he should. Well, how far are you moving him? Up above this guy. Why? So just change it. See where he ends up, right? It's very simple. That's not something people need to be told. I don't think. Just a reminder. I think it's really easy to do things like that and get an idea, because it's even easier to say, "Oh, I'm just going to bump him up a little bit," but I need to have a reason for it and to know where I'm bumping him to. So that's my thing.
Yeah. Just, if not for other people, just for yourself. Right.
Oh yeah, it is for me. Absolutely.
You need to sell it to yourself.
My peace of mind.
All right, cool. Well, I think that we're doing trying to stretch this out to 2 hours so we can go back to back with 2-hour shows, but we didn't quite make it there. We'll have plenty more to talk about next week as the winter meetings close up shop, and hopefully we get another big name signing or trade or something that we can add
Come on,
on
Kyle
to
Tucker, pick a place.
Yeah, right. There's still plenty of names out there to make a splash. So we'll see what we have to talk about next week. But I look forward to that. After all that and everything else, that's going to do it for episode 236 of On the Wire. I am Adam Howe, and on behalf of Kevin Hasting, thanks for listening, and we bid you goodbye.